Keanu Reeves was not born into the glittering world of Hollywood. His life began in a much humbler and uncertain way. He came into the world on September 2, 1964, in Beirut, Lebanon. His father, Samuel Nowlin Reeves Jr., was an American of Hawaiian and Chinese descent, and his mother, Patricia, was from England. At first, it seemed like a normal family, but very quickly life showed that it would not be easy. When Keanu was just 3 years old, his father left the family. That decision created a huge void in the boy's life. His mother moved him and his younger sister, Kim, to different places in search of stability. They lived in Australia for a short while, then in New York, and finally settled in Toronto, Canada. Moving so often meant that Keanu never felt fully settled anywhere. For a child, such constant change can be confusing, but young Keanu adapted as best as he could. His mother worked hard as a costume designer to support her children, and Keanu often saw her strength as she tried to keep the family together despite the absence of their father. Growing up in Toronto, Keanu had to face another challenge: school. While many children enjoy reading and writing without much difficulty, Keanu struggled because of dyslexia. Words on a page seemed jumbled, and this made learning difficult. Teachers sometimes thought he was not paying attention or not serious about studies, but the truth was that he was fighting a silent battle every time he opened a book. This led to frustration and poor grades. Over time, he attended 4 different high schools, constantly switching because he couldn't find a place where he felt he belonged. Eventually, he decided to leave formal education behind without earning a diploma. Although academics did not come naturally to him, Keanu found other passions. One of his greatest loves was ice hockey. On the ice, he felt free, fast, and strong. His skill as a goaltender was so impressive that his teammates gave him the nickname "The Wall." For a time, he even dreamed of becoming a professional hockey player. But fate had other plans. A serious injury forced him to give up that dream, and once again, Keanu had to search for a new direction in life. That direction turned out to be acting. While school had been difficult, the stage felt natural. He joined community theater and began performing in small plays. Acting gave him a voice and a place where he could express himself without the pressure of textbooks and tests. His unique presence, his mix of shyness and intensity, caught the attention of people around him. Soon, he was appearing in television roles and commercials in Canada. It was not glamorous, but it was a beginning. By the time Keanu Reeves entered his late 50s, he had already lived a life full of contrasts. On one side, there was the pain, his losses, his grief, his struggles. On the other side, there was his success, his films, his fame, and the love of millions of fans. Few actors had ever been admired for both their work and their character in the way Keanu was. His story had become bigger than Hollywood. It had become a symbol of resilience, humility, and kindness in a world that often seemed to forget those values. Keanu's professional career alone was enough to secure him a place in film history. From Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure to Speed, from Point Break to The Matrix, and later the John Wick series, his filmography was filled with cultural milestones. Each generation seemed to have its own version of Keanu: the goofy Ted, the brave Jack Traven, the chosen Neo, and the relentless John Wick. He had managed to reinvent himself again and again, staying relevant across decades in an industry that often forgets even its brightest stars. But Keanu's true legacy was never just about the movies. It was about the way he lived and the way he treated others. While many stars sought attention, Keanu avoided it. While others measured success in wealth or fame, Keanu measured it in moments of connection, in acts of kindness, and in living simply. This rare approach made him stand out in Hollywood, where humility was often in short supply. The release of John Wick in 2014 marked another turning point in his career. The film was a surprise hit, giving him a new identity as an action hero for a new generation. Audiences loved the character of John Wick, a man who carried deep pain but still fought with strength and determination. Many fans saw a reflection of Keanu himself in the role. Like Wick, he was someone who had endured great loss, yet found a way to keep moving forward. The success of the franchise brought Keanu back into the global spotlight, and younger audiences discovered him with fresh admiration. But even as his fame soared again, Keanu remained unchanged. Stories continued to surface of his ordinary lifestyle. Photos went viral of him sitting alone on a park bench, eating a sandwich quietly, an image that led fans to affectionately call him Sad Keanu, though the photo was more about his normal, human side than true sadness. Memes and jokes spread across the internet, but instead of being insulted, Keanu laughed along. His humility allowed him to be both a global superstar and an ordinary man at the same time. What people admired most was that Keanu never acted superior. Whether he was walking into a red carpet event or sharing a train ride with strangers, he carried himself with the same calm grace. Crew members, fans, and fellow actors all had stories of his politeness and generosity. In one instance, when a flight was delayed and passengers had to take a long bus ride together, Keanu joined them without complaint, chatting with strangers and helping organize transportation. For the people on that bus, it was unforgettable not because a movie star was with them, but because he treated them as equals. Keanu's legacy also includes his quiet contributions to causes he cared about. Though he rarely spoke about it publicly, it became known that he had donated large portions of his earnings to medical research, hospitals, and children's charities. He also helped fund smaller independent films, giving young directors a chance to bring their visions to life. His generosity was often invisible, hidden from headlines, but those who received his help never forgot it. For fans, Keanu became a reminder that fame does not have to change a person. He showed that one can be successful without arrogance, wealthy without greed, and famous without cruelty. In a culture where celebrities often made news for scandals or excess, Keanu made news for simple kindness, buying breakfast for a crew member, taking time to sign autographs for hours, or quietly supporting a struggling friend. His legacy also lies in his words. In interviews, he often spoke with honesty and humility. When asked about his pain, he didn't pretend it wasn't there. When asked about happiness, he didn't give perfect answers. He simply acknowledged the reality of life, the ups and downs, the joys and the losses. This honesty made people feel closer to him. He wasn't just an untouchable star, he was human, someone who carried sadness but still chose to be gentle and kind. Keanu Reeves became a cultural symbol not because of his perfect image, but because of his imperfections. People saw in him a man who had every reason to give up, but who instead chose to keep going. They saw someone who had lost love but still gave love to others. They saw someone who could have lived in isolation, but who instead sat down with strangers and shared a moment. His story also challenged traditional ideas of success. While Hollywood often celebrated wealth, glamour, and power, Keanu showed that true success could be something else: peace of mind, kindness to others, and a life lived authentically. Fans around the world admired him not only for his movies but for reminding them that being good was possible, even in the most competitive and harsh environments. By the time documentaries and articles began calling him Hollywood's last good man, Keanu had already proven that title true through his actions. He didn't need awards or recognition to show his worth. His legacy was written in the memories of people he had helped, in the stories fans shared, and in the quiet way he lived his life. Looking at his life as a whole, Keanu Reeves is remembered as much for his heart as for his talent. He brought joy to millions through his films, but he inspired even more by showing how to carry grief with dignity and how to live with kindness despite pain. His legacy is one of hope that even in a world filled with struggles, it is possible to stay humble, generous, and good. In the end, Keanu's story is not just about an actor. It is about a man who faced life's hardest trials and responded with grace. It is about someone who never let fame change his humanity. It is about reminding the world that kindness matters, that humility is strength, and that even in the most glamorous corners of Hollywood, goodness can survive. This is why Keanu Reeves is remembered not just as a star, but as something greater, a symbol of resilience, compassion, and quiet strength. His legacy will not fade with time, because it is written not only in films but in the hearts of those he touched. He is, and will always be, Hollywood's last good man. Behind this early journey was a young man still trying to understand who he was. Without a father figure, moving from place to place, and struggling in school, Keanu could have easily lost hope. But what made him different was his quiet strength. Instead of giving up, he kept pushing forward, even if he didn't know exactly where life would take him. He was curious, hardworking, and open to opportunities. During these teenage years, he also began to show the traits that people would later admire him for: kindness, humility, and a calm spirit. He was not the loudest or the most confident person in the room, but he carried himself with sincerity. Friends often said that Keanu was the type of person who listened more than he spoke, someone who made you feel heard. These early qualities shaped the man he would become later. In Toronto, Keanu also found a multicultural environment that exposed him to different people, ideas, and experiences. While his classmates sometimes teased him for being different, he grew stronger by learning to accept himself. He developed a love for music and often spent time listening to rock bands, dreaming of playing in one himself. His teenage years were a mix of struggle and discovery, of pain and small joys. The turning point came when he made the decision to chase acting more seriously. He took a bold step by leaving Canada for Los Angeles, California, the heart of the film industry. For a young man with no famous connections, no diploma, and no secure path, this was a risky move. But Keanu had already learned from childhood that life was full of challenges. If he could survive moving across countries, losing his father, and struggling in school, then surely he could try his luck in Hollywood. When Keanu arrived in Los Angeles in the 1980s, the world around him was competitive and intimidating. Thousands of young actors came with the same dream, and very few succeeded. But Keanu had something special, an authenticity that made people curious about him. Casting directors noticed his unusual blend of vulnerability and strength. His dark eyes carried both sadness and hope, and his quiet way of speaking made people want to listen more closely. In those early auditions, he often played small parts, sometimes just a few lines. But every role mattered, and Keanu gave his best. Slowly, the pieces began to fit together. He landed a role in the 1986 film River's Edge, a dark story about troubled youth. His performance caught attention, showing that he could handle serious roles. More opportunities followed, and soon, his name began appearing in bigger projects. But before the fame, before the blockbuster films, before the image of Keanu Reeves as we know him today, there was simply a boy who faced more difficulties than comforts. His early years were full of instability, learning struggles, and personal loss. Yet, those same hardships built a foundation of resilience. He didn't become bitter or angry at life. Instead, he grew into someone who valued simplicity, kindness, and authenticity. These beginnings are important to understand because they explain why Keanu Reeves never became the typical Hollywood star. Fame and money never defined him. They were only parts of his journey. What truly shaped him was the childhood filled with uncertainty, the mother who sacrificed for him, the sister he cared for, the schools he left behind, and the hockey dreams that ended too soon. Out of these struggles rose a man who would one day become one of the most beloved figures in Hollywood, not because of his success, but because of his humanity. Part 1 of his story is not glamorous. It is about hardship, searching, and survival. But it is also about hope. Every setback he faced only prepared him for the person he was meant to be. And though Keanu could not know it yet, the path he was walking would lead him to fame, fortune, and heartbreaking losses that would test him again and again. His story was just beginning when Keanu Reeves first stepped into Hollywood. He was just another young man with a dream. The city was filled with thousands of hopeful actors, each one looking for that one big break. For many, it was a world of disappointment, where rejections piled up and success was rare. But Keanu was different. He didn't arrive with loud confidence or connections in the industry. Instead, he carried himself with quiet determination, patience, and a willingness to work hard. In the mid-1980s, he began to land small roles in films and television shows. He was still unknown to the public, but every part mattered to him. His first real recognition came with the film River's Edge in 1986. It was a dark and intense movie about troubled teenagers, and Keanu played a thoughtful, conflicted character. Audiences and critics noticed him. His presence on screen was unique. He wasn't trying to be the loudest or the most charming actor, but something about his calmness, his deep eyes, and his sincerity drew people in. This early success led him to more opportunities. Over the next few years, Keanu appeared in different films, exploring comedy, drama, and even action. Then came the movie that would change everything for him, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure in 1989. The film was a light-hearted comedy about two goofy teenagers who travel through time in a phone booth. Keanu played Ted, a cheerful, clueless, but lovable character. Nobody expected much from the movie, but it became a huge hit. Suddenly, Keanu Reeves was a name everyone knew. Audiences loved Ted, and Keanu's performance made people smile. But while the movie made him famous, it also created a problem. Many critics started to label him as just a surfer dude or a simple-minded comic actor. They thought he could only play silly roles. This label would follow him for years, and Keanu often had to fight against it. Yet, instead of complaining, he kept working, trying to prove that he was more than just one character. In the early 1990s, Keanu began to take on different kinds of roles. One of the most important came in 1991 with the action film Point Break, where he starred alongside Patrick Swayze. Keanu played an FBI agent who goes undercover to catch a gang of surfers. The movie was full of adrenaline, surfing, and skydiving, and it became a cult classic. More importantly, it showed that Keanu could handle action roles. He wasn't just the funny Ted anymore, he could also be a believable hero. That same year, he also appeared in My Own Private Idaho, a small independent film directed by Gus Van Sant. In this movie, Keanu played a complex and emotional role alongside his close friend River Phoenix. The film was artistic, emotional, and very different from his previous work. Critics praised his performance, and suddenly people saw him in a new light. Keanu was not afraid to take risks. He could act in Hollywood blockbusters, but he was also willing to dive into small, serious projects for the sake of art. As his career grew, so did his fame. He became a recognizable face in magazines, interviews, and film posters. But unlike many young actors who let fame change them, Keanu remained humble. He did not chase the spotlight, and he often avoided Hollywood parties and glamorous lifestyles. He preferred quiet moments, spending time with close friends or riding his motorcycle through the streets of Los Angeles. Then came 1994, the year that truly made him a superstar. Keanu took the lead role in the action thriller Speed, alongside Sandra Bullock. The film's plot was simple but exciting. A bus rigged with a bomb would explode if its speed dropped below 50 miles per hour. Keanu played the brave police officer trying to save everyone on board. The movie was a massive success around the world. Critics loved it, audiences cheered for it, and Keanu Reeves officially became an action star. After Speed, everyone in Hollywood wanted to work with him. Studios saw him as a bankable star, someone who could bring in millions at the box office. But once again, Keanu showed that he was different from most actors. Instead of chasing every big paycheck, he carefully chose roles that interested him. For example, when the studio offered him Speed 2, a sequel to the blockbuster, he turned it down. Most actors would have jumped at the chance to make more money and secure more fame. But Keanu said no because he did not believe in the script. This decision shocked Hollywood, but it also revealed something important: Keanu cared more about the quality of his work than the size of his paycheck. During this period, he continued exploring different roles. He acted in dramas like Little Buddha and A Walk in the Clouds, showing his softer side. He appeared in Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing, surprising audiences with his ability to handle classical dialogue. Every project he took on showed his versatility. He wasn't just an action hero or a comedy star, he was an actor willing to try anything. Behind the camera, however, Keanu's life remained quiet and modest. Unlike many celebrities, he didn't buy huge mansions or throw wild parties. He lived simply, often driving an old car or riding his motorcycle instead of showing off luxury vehicles. Fans began to notice his humility, and stories started to spread about how kind he was in real life. People would see him sitting on park benches, eating alone, or talking politely with strangers. He was becoming famous not just for his roles, but also for his character. By the late 1990s, Keanu's career had already been a journey of highs and lows. He had started as a struggling actor, found fame through comedy, fought against being typecast, and risen to international stardom through action films. He had worked with major stars and talented directors, always proving that he was capable of more than what critics expected. But the best was still to come. In 1999, Keanu would take on the role that would define his career and transform him into a cultural icon. The movie was The Matrix. It wasn't just another Hollywood film, it was a groundbreaking piece of cinema that changed how people viewed science fiction and action. Keanu's role as Neo, the chosen one who discovers the truth about reality, would forever cement his place in Hollywood history. But that is a story for the next part of his journey. What matters here is how Keanu Reeves, a boy who once struggled in school and dreamed of playing hockey, managed to rise to the very top of Hollywood. He did it not by chasing fame or money, but by being authentic, hardworking, and willing to take risks. His rise to stardom was not the story of someone who fit neatly into the Hollywood mold. Instead, it was the story of an outsider who became a star on his own terms. By the late 1990s, Keanu Reeves had already become a major Hollywood star. With Speed and then The Matrix, he had gained worldwide recognition. Audiences loved his calm but powerful style, and his career was reaching new heights. But away from the bright lights of Hollywood, Keanu's personal life told a very different story, one filled with loss, grief, and pain that most people could not even imagine. One of the earliest and deepest wounds in his life was the loss of his closest friend, River Phoenix. Keanu and River had met in the late 1980s, and they quickly became more like brothers than just friends. Both were young actors trying to find their place in Hollywood, and both were sensitive souls who didn't quite fit into the glamorous and sometimes fake world around them. Their bond grew even stronger when they worked together in the film My Own Private Idaho in 1991. River Phoenix was talented, charismatic, and admired by many. But behind the talent, he was struggling with personal issues. In 1993, at only 23 years old, River tragically passed away outside a nightclub in Los Angeles. The news shook Hollywood, but for Keanu, it was like losing family. He was devastated. People who knew him said that Keanu carried the sadness of that loss for years. Even much later in life, when asked about River, his voice would become quiet and heavy with emotion. Losing his best friend at such a young age left a permanent scar on his heart. But River's passing was not the only tragedy that would come into Keanu's life. A few years later, in the late 1990s, Keanu met Jennifer Syme, a beautiful and talented actress and personal assistant. The two quickly fell in love, and for the first time, it seemed like Keanu had found personal happiness. Their relationship was full of warmth, and those close to him noticed how much joy Jennifer brought into his life. In 1999, the couple received life-changing news: Jennifer was pregnant. Keanu was overjoyed. Friends said he was excited about becoming a father and looked forward to building a family. For someone who had grown up with so much instability, the thought of creating a home of his own gave him hope. But that hope was shattered when, in December of that year, Jennifer gave birth to a baby girl who was stillborn. They had planned to name her Ava. The pain of losing a child is something very few can understand, and for Keanu and Jennifer, it was heartbreaking beyond words. Their relationship struggled under the weight of grief. Although they still cared deeply for one another, the sadness pulled them apart, and they eventually separated. Still, they remained close, supporting one another through the difficult times. Then, just as Keanu was beginning to learn how to carry that pain, another tragedy struck. In April 2001, Jennifer Syme died in a car accident in Los Angeles. She was only 28 years old. For Keanu, this was another unbearable loss. In only a few short years, he had lost his best friend, his child, and the woman he loved. Many people would have collapsed under the weight of so much grief, but Keanu endured it silently. Those close to him say that he never truly recovered from these losses. He didn't hide his sadness, but he also didn't let it turn him bitter. Instead, he carried it with dignity and grace. When interviewers asked him about his personal life, he would answer honestly but softly, never seeking pity. In one interview, when asked about grief, Keanu replied with words that touched millions: "Grief changes shape, but it never ends." Those words came from someone who knew the truth of loss. Around the same time, Keanu faced another personal challenge. His younger sister, Kim, was diagnosed with leukemia, a form of cancer. He stood by her side, caring for her during her treatment and helping her through the painful process. His bond with his sister was strong, and he often said that she inspired him with her courage. Later, when she recovered, Keanu quietly donated large amounts of money to cancer research, but he never made a show of it. For him, it was personal. It was about supporting people like his sister who had to fight such a hard battle. Despite the heavy burden of grief, Keanu continued working in films. Many people might have stepped away from the spotlight, but for him, acting was a way to keep moving forward. Still, his personal life remained quiet and solitary. He did not marry, and he did not have children. He often spoke about wanting a family, but fate had taken that from him. Instead, he focused on his work and on being kind to the people around him. These tragedies shaped the man that audiences would later call Hollywood's last good man. While many stars used fame to live in luxury, Keanu lived simply. He didn't chase material possessions or the glamour of celebrity life. Instead, he focused on what mattered: kindness, compassion, and authenticity. Friends described him as someone who would rather give than receive, someone who treated crew members on movie sets with the same respect as famous co-stars. In many ways, his personal heartbreaks gave him a deeper understanding of others. Stories spread about how Keanu would sit and talk with homeless people on the street, listening to their stories without judgment. Fans shared stories of him giving up his seat on the subway, signing autographs with patients, or quietly donating to hospitals. He never announced these acts of kindness; they simply became part of who he was. What made Keanu's story so remarkable was not just the success of The Matrix or the fame he had achieved, but the way he responded to pain. Life had taken so much from him: his friend, his partner, his child, but he refused to let tragedy define him. Instead, he turned it into compassion for others. His silence, his humility, and his gentle spirit became his greatest strengths. By the early 2000s, the public began to see Keanu not only as a movie star but also as a symbol of resilience. People admired him for his roles, but they respected him for his humanity. His story reminded others that behind the glamour of Hollywood, there are real people who carry real pain. And in Keanu's case, that pain was met with courage and grace. Part 3 of his life is not the story of fame or career, it is the story of heartbreak and how a man learns to live with it. Keanu Reeves lost more than most people could bear, but he carried those losses with quiet dignity. His tragedies shaped him, but they also revealed his true character. Instead of breaking him, they made him stronger, kinder, and more human. As the years went on, Keanu would continue to build his career, but his personal story always stayed with him. It was a reminder to the world that even those who seem to have everything, fame, success, money, can also carry deep sorrow. And perhaps that is why so many people feel connected to him. He is not just a star on the screen, he is a man who has known pain, and who has chosen kindness despite it. Keanu Reeves had already gone through more pain than most people could imagine. The loss of his best friend, his partner, and his child left deep wounds in his heart. Many in his place might have withdrawn completely or grown bitter, but Keanu chose a different path. Out of his sadness grew a remarkable compassion for others. He became known not just as a famous actor, but as a man whose kindness touched countless lives. What made Keanu different was that he never tried to advertise his good deeds. In Hollywood, many celebrities support charities and make sure the cameras are watching. But Keanu was the opposite. His generosity often went unnoticed until someone else revealed it. To him, kindness was not about attention or praise. It was simply about doing the right thing. One of the clearest examples of his quiet giving came after the success of the Matrix films. The trilogy earned billions of dollars worldwide, and Keanu, as the lead actor, made an enormous amount of money. But instead of keeping it all for himself, he gave away a huge portion of his earnings. He reportedly gave tens of millions to the behind-the-scenes teams, the special effects workers, the costume designers, and the stunt crews, because he believed they were the real heroes who made the films possible. He knew how hard they worked and how little recognition they often received. For Keanu, money was never the goal. He once said, "Money is the last thing I think about. I could live on what I've already made for centuries." These words showed his true attitude toward wealth. While others built mansions and collected luxury cars, Keanu chose a simpler life. He lived in an ordinary apartment for years, rode the subway like any other commuter, and often walked the streets without bodyguards or assistants. Fame had not changed him. If anything, it made him even more grounded. Stories of Keanu's kindness began to spread widely, often from fans or strangers who had brief encounters with him. One famous story told of him sitting on a park bench, sharing food with a homeless man. Another described how he gave up his subway seat to a woman carrying a heavy bag, like any considerate passenger would. These were small moments, but they revealed his character. He treated everyone with respect, whether they were a film executive or a stranger on the street. Even on film sets, Keanu was different from most stars. Crew members often spoke about how he remembered people's names, greeted everyone warmly, and made them feel valued. On one occasion, he bought Harley-Davidson motorcycles for his entire stunt team after filming The Matrix Reloaded, as a way of thanking them for their dangerous work. Such gestures came from his heart, not from a desire to be praised. His generosity extended beyond the world of film. Keanu quietly donated millions to hospitals, children's charities, and cancer research organizations. Because his sister had battled leukemia, he understood how painful and costly such struggles could be. Instead of attaching his name to big charity campaigns, he chose to give in silence. Only later, when others discovered his donations, did the public realize how much he had contributed. What made these acts even more remarkable was that Keanu himself lived without luxury. He did not surround himself with expensive jewelry, private jets, or giant estates. He was often seen walking the streets in simple clothes, carrying a small backpack, or riding his motorcycle alone. Fans sometimes took pictures of him sitting alone in cafes, reading a book, or enjoying a quiet meal. His life was proof that happiness did not come from material things, but from simplicity and kindness. People around the world began to see him as a rare figure in Hollywood, a star who remained human. Social media filled with stories and photos of Keanu being just like us. But the difference was that, despite his fame, he chose humility again and again. He reminded people that true greatness was not in how much you owned, but in how you treated others. Another reason Keanu became admired was his ability to listen. Those who met him often said that he gave them his full attention, even if they were strangers. He wasn't rushing, distracted, or pretending. He made people feel seen. In a world where many celebrities built walls around themselves, Keanu remained approachable. Fans were surprised to find that the man they admired on screen was even kinder in person. His humanity was also visible in how he handled interviews. Unlike many stars who spoke in polished, rehearsed ways, Keanu often paused, thought deeply, and answered with honesty. Sometimes his words were short, but they always felt sincere. He did not try to impress anyone, he simply spoke from the heart. When he once said, "Be kind, because everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about," people around the world shared and remembered those words. They came from his own experience of loss, but they also reflected his empathy for others. Keanu's kindness was not just toward individuals, it also influenced his professional choices. Many times, he took pay cuts so that other actors or crew members could be hired. For example, during one film, he agreed to lower his salary so that the studio could afford to hire a legendary actor he admired. To him, making a great film mattered more than making more money. Such decisions showed his respect for the art of filmmaking and for the people he worked with. Despite all these examples of generosity, Keanu never saw himself as a hero. He often described himself as just another person trying to live his life. When people praised him, he looked almost uncomfortable, as if he didn't believe he deserved special attention. This humility made him even more beloved. Fans felt that he was not only a movie star, but also a symbol of what it meant to be a good human being. As time went on, his reputation as a good man grew stronger. While many Hollywood figures became known for scandals or arrogance, Keanu became known for kindness. He had turned his personal tragedies into fuel for compassion. The pain he carried allowed him to understand the pain of others, and that understanding guided his actions. Part 4 of his life is about more than fame or success. It is about the quiet choices a person makes every day, choosing to be kind instead of selfish, humble instead of proud, generous instead of greedy. Keanu Reeves showed the world that even in the glamorous world of Hollywood, where ego often rules, it is possible to live with simplicity, respect, and love for others. His story inspired millions, not because he was perfect, but because he was real. He was proof that kindness could exist even in places where it seemed rare. By living this way, Keanu built a legacy far greater than any movie role. He became a symbol of hope, reminding people that being good, even in small ways, can change lives.